I'm under no illusions that this week's pivotal. It's pivotal for the football club. I don't think about myself. I think about how can we get results in the next 3 games to put points on the table, to build momentum, to climb up that table, to be in a position where we can attack the season.
Inter Miami's bye week is done and dusted, but with that time off came some notable changes to the roster ahead of what is a pivotal few days. Hello and hola to everyone y todos. Welcome back to the #1 weekly and bilingual Inter Miami focused podcast that provides you with all the latest news, analysis, opinions, inside information, general punditry, and much, much more via a team of seasoned South Florida-based reporters. We are, of course, talking about Miami Total Football Radio, a.k.a. Miami Total Football Radio. My name is Franco Panizo. I am one of your usual weekly co-hosts of this podcast, a podcast that has been listened to in more than 50 countries and where the beautiful game collides with passion and analysis. If I sound energetic after the week off, well, it's because I am. I'm feeling nice and refreshed and ready to tackle some more Inter Miami topics ahead of what is, like I just mentioned, a very pivotal week for the South Florida side. Joining me this week, as they do almost every week, are the lovely duo, both professionally and personally, that is Jose Armando, a.k.a. Island Jose, a.k.a. Cinco sometimes, and Andrea Yanez, a.k.a. Ajicita. We'll start with ladies first. Andrea, how did you enjoy the bye week, the week off from Inter Miami games? I know you're still busy with other things, but how did you enjoy the time off, and how are you doing?
It was enjoyable. I still had to work, but it was enjoyable. I missed always football is the #1 in my eyes, so I missed it a little bit. I have a lot of things to say because I was not here last week, so I have all that pent up energy like inside of me. So I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to talk about Inter Miami, and I'm ready after this bye week to continue to speak and to give my opinions about what is happening with the team.
Jose, how are you doing? How was your bye week? And I'm doing the quotation marks here with my fingers because I know you don't rest rarely ever. So how was it? How are you doing?
It was good. It was good. I got to watch a little bit of the CONCACAF Under-20 Championship. I had to work a couple of games, so that kept me entertained with a lot of work to do. But at the same time, I kind of missed, just checking my phone and see what's going on with Inter Miami lineups, early Saturday routine, well, early afternoon, I should say, where you're starting to get ready and try to figure what Phil's going to do this week. So I'm happy that the team is back, and thankfully I will be able to do an old school, what should I say? Should call this old school coverage of Inter Miami whenever they go on a road game, because I rarely get to watch the game fully the day off. So this Saturday will be the case. They're on the road. I'll be watching.
Jose is a busy, busy man. And actually, interesting note here for you listeners, old and new, of Miami Total Football Radio. One of the English broadcast members that will be calling this game is a former Miami Total Football Radio teammate and an alum. And that is Eric Krakauer, my first co-host dating back to 2020. He's on the call with Lloyd Sam on Saturday in English. So not only am I looking forward to that, just to see a person I worked with closely, as well as Lloyd Sam, who I covered when he was with the New York Red Bulls, call their first Inter Miami game of the season, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's accurate. But it'll be good to hear the Miami Total Football Radio voice, I'm impersonating him, on the call. By the way, during the bye week, I unplugged a good bit, and I had a housewarming overdue housewarming. Tough to do housewarming on Saturdays when you have to work every Saturday. And I had a good time. I know you guys couldn't make it because you guys had to work.
You were not,
We weren't invited. This is the first time I am hearing about this.
That's not true. Andrea,
not
you are now
receive an
lying.
Invitation.
Andrea.
I did not receive. I can show my WhatsApp. I can show my phone. I didn't receive a message from Franco.
Andrea.
I'm an independent person. Jose is not my boss. He's not my owner. And you told Jose, but you didn't tell me. So.
Andrea, you were not going to come an hour and a half to drink and party with us on a Saturday while Jose had to work. You were not doing that. No way you were doing that. and this is not the first you've heard of this because you had already heard it through Jose. See, so now you've lied. You say you never lie on the podcast. Now we've caught you in a dirty, dirty lie. But anyway, stop making a big fuss. You guys weren't coming anyway. By the way, I may or may not have gotten a note on my door mid of party or mid event by someone, a neighbor that complained or something, but that may or may not have happened. Anyway, all right, we've got plenty of Inter Miami to talk about because yes, there was no game this past weekend, but there was a lot of news over the last few days since we last recorded. There's been plenty of development regarding the team, so we will talk about all that. We will talk about the comments made on Wednesday, the team's first availability since the most recent loss, which was a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. Of course, we'll preview this upcoming weekend's game against the Houston Dynamo and the Q&A session and the final thoughts at the end of the pod. So, plenty to dissect, plenty to discuss. Jose, Andrea, listeners, let's get to it. All right, so a lot has happened. We recorded early last week, and Jose, I won't say that was a mistake because it was good to get a pod out, nice and early in the week as opposed to a little bit later in the week, especially given all that had transpired over that previous weekend. Inter Miami's losing streak stretching to 5 games. But on Tuesday, a surprise development. Inter Miami made a trade, and this is where we will start this week's pod. Inter Miami agrees to swapping Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter to CF Montreal for Kamal Miller and $1.3 million in general allocation money, also known as GAM. Pretty big trade by MLS standards. Don't think anyone saw that one coming, but it happened. Inter Miami has a new Canadian international center back on the roster. It no longer has the young upcoming prospect, and it no longer has Ariel Lassiter, who was a part-time starter in 2022 and who had become kind of surplus to requirements this season. So let's dive into what it all means. Your initial reaction, Jose, when you saw the trade, and now that you've had time to think about it a little bit more, dissect what's been said, your thoughts on the trade.
I didn't like it. My first reaction was that I don't think it's something that is going to help the team right now. And I understand that, experts in MLS budget and, money, MLS type of money situations have been saying that, oh, yes, this could be great for Inter Miami, free up some space and give them more money. Yeah, there's no guarantee that you can spend the next amount of money on a player and that he'll be good. So what I can tell you right now is that Miami is not a better team without Duke and without Ariel Lassiter, because the one thing that they have been missing is goals. And you basically took away 2 players that at some point, Ariel Lassiter looked like, a backup 9, a backup striker since the change of formation. Last year, he was very, very good for the team. And obviously, Bryce Duke, I think he had a good season last year, and I will take that over 3 or 4 games that he didn't perform this year. I think the upside for him is something that Inter Miami is going to miss, because Inter Miami, they don't have a lot of players with upside, and Bryce Duke was one of them. And Phil talked about, okay, we bought him for $100,000, sold him for over $1 million. That might be different in 2 or 3 years from now. Bryce Duke was just talking about it this week. He still wants to go and play overseas. If he continues to develop at this rate, he's 22. He has probably 2 more years to make the jump and go overseas, and then 1 million will be not enough. So overall, don't like it. Don't like it.
Andrea, did you have similar thoughts to Jose when you saw the trade, or do you think that something like this was needed given the state of Inter Miami and the performance levels that we were seeing up to this point in the season?
No, I agree with Jose. And to add to Jose's point of Inter Miami saying that they want to build youngsters and blah, 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 which is a lie. They haven't done that. And I have said that 1,000 times in this podcast. But besides that, I mean, they traded Damian Lowe because they said, we are good in defense. We are good with Sergi Christoph. We're going to be good. How come you are selling your attacking-minded players that are both young, that you could sell for a profit also in the future, not just for $1 million or whatever, general allocation money, whatever you want to call it, and to get a central defender that, listen, everyone says, yes, he has a good level. Listen, Canada was the worst team in the World Cup. He's a Canadian men's national team player. Yes, he is. But he is in the same level as Damian Lowe. And besides, he is a player who has only 1 year contract left in his contract and wants to leave. That is the reason why he didn't stay in Montreal, because he wanted to leave after the World Cup and they couldn't sell. So it's not a player that is going to spend years and years and years and years here in Miami.
I love that you said blah, blah, blah. I love when you say blah, blah, blah when you're like paraphrasing what someone on Inter Miami has said. I hate that you guys both call this a bad trade. I think it is a very, very good trade for Inter Miami because Bryce Duke had not been performing up to levels. You can, chalk up to some of that tactically and how Phil Neville was using him. Even before that, I don't think he was overly convincing. And going back to even last season, yes, he showed flashes. But I just haven't seen enough. And I've been critical of him at times because I just haven't seen enough to say that, he's the future. He's going to be the future. In Montreal, he's going to get, I think, a good chance to get a lot more playing time and minutes. And, I think they're looking at him as a potential replacement for Georgi Mihailovic, who they sold this offseason to Europe. So he'll get a good run there. But I don't think long term he was going to cut it here at Inter Miami. And we had talked about this last week, Jose. Phil had said that they think his best position was like as an 8/6. I don't think he really meant 6, but let's just say 8 central midfielder, not an attacking midfielder. And I don't disagree with that. I don't necessarily think he's good enough to be. I don't think he's good enough to be a 10 consistently at the MLS level as a starter. That's just my opinion. And I think
he just needed chances, like every player with Phil. It's going to be the same story. He just needed the chances, the consistency to play in his position and develop, and he didn't get that here. He didn't get it.
We'll get to that point in a second because I don't disagree with that, Andrea. I also do hate that you called Ariel Lassiter young. That you referenced him and Duke as young players. Because when I called Robbie Robinson young a couple seasons ago, or a season ago, you guys thrashed me for labeling him as such, which I agree. He was not a young player then. Ariel Lassiter is not a young player now. And I highly, highly doubt that Ariel Lassiter is going to be sold to Europe at
Not
any
to
point.
Europe, no, but he can go and play in Mexico.
No one's buying Ariel Lassiter. That's not happening. Like he's not.
I think the player with the upside is Bryce Duke.
Yeah, to go to Europe
That's
is
the player
Bryce
with
Duke.
the upside. Yeah. I think Ari Lassiter he was good for this team. I think we can all agree on that. He was good for Inter Miami last year.
He was a good piece last year.
Good.
This year, I do think that he deserved, or maybe not deserved. Deserves is the wrong word. I think he should have gotten more looks, just because of the way the team was playing and it wasn't working. But clearly, like we mentioned, also, I believe last week, Jose, on the pod. My opinion, my sensation, not inside information, just my sensation, is that he just didn't fit what Phil Neville's trying to do this year. It's clear that Inter Miami's trying to be a technical team that's better with the ball and on the ball, and Ariel Lassiter is not that. Ariel Lassiter can provide you verticality and speed and some strength and physicality, but he's not the most technical player.
I will add this. I think this is not a good trade for Inter Miami, and I stand by that, but I think it is good for the players. I mean, I think the players, they will both get to play in their positions that they like and that they can perform at their highest level. So, I feel like, and I think both of them did play midweek, and Duke played last weekend. They started the Canadian Championship, by the way, so that's what I'm referring to as midweek here. So I think it's going to be good for them. I don't know if Ari Lassiter will be the same as what he was last year for Inter Miami in Montreal this year, but I think he'll get more opportunities. And I think Bryce too, selling him for $1 million and telling people in the media today that, oh, we sold him for $1 million. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that kid has potential, and I would say $1 million for him. It's not going to be a lot in 2 years.
Well, $1 million in general allocation money is not the same as $1 million in the open transfer market, right? You're talking MLS funny money to actual real life money. Like it's like comparing Monopoly money to dollars in your actual your dollars in your wallet or purse. But look, listen. For MLS intents and purposes, I do think it's a good trade because you're trading away one piece in Ariel Lassiter who didn't apparently fit into the plans this season, and who is technically limited and isn't the best in the final third in terms of the end product. And then with Bryce Duke, you're maximizing, I think, in terms of his current value, a player who isn't ready to is not delivering and is not necessarily ready to be an every game starter for what Inter Miami aspires to be. Like they don't have the luxury, based on their own expectations, based on the fan base, based on the ownership group, they don't have the luxury of cutting the teeth of young players. And again, we'll get to that here. That'll be the next topic. So I think it's a good trade, especially since that $1.3 million in GAM, in general allocation money, is apparently going to go towards bringing in somebody else this summer. So yes, while in the short term you could, throw your arms up in the air and say it's a bad trade, and there's a bigger picture here. And something Chris Henderson said in an interview not too long ago is that when it comes to MLS, and if you follow the league for a long time, you're aware of, if you're an Inter Miami fan and you've been following the team since the beginning, you should be aware of it as well, is that in MLS you have to plan 2 to 3 transfer windows ahead. Because that's just the nature of a league that has a salary cap or salary budget. You have to start thinking for the future, maybe sooner than you do in other leagues. So this $1.3 million, you're not going to see the fruits of that this weekend, but you might see it this summer. Now,
when you're out of the playoff picture, probably.
Now, according to...
So that's great. Just throwing away this year. Again, that's what happens.
Jose, you're bringing a crystal ball. We don't know that that's the case. You don't know
who they're going to bring with that millions of dollars.
According to the Miami Herald, that is going to be money that they can use towards bringing in a player like Sergio Busquets. Now, before you jump all over me here, Jose.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not saying that. Wow. I am not saying
more allocation money to bring in Busquets.
Hold on. I am not saying that money should go towards a player like Sergio Busquets. But if that money gives you flexibility to bring in a player that can raise the level of this team and be an impact starter or be an every game starter from the moment he arrives, then I think that improves this team. Maybe not in the short term, but in the medium term, in the middle term, I think that improves the team.
What if that money goes indeed to bringing Busquets? Then this is a bad trade. If that happens,
then I have questions. Questions.
See,
I do think Messi.
Wait until that happens.
Well,
right
no.
now,
So
he needs to win right now. If the team goes on a losing streak and they are out of the Open Cup and they are up to 7 games, dropping 7 games in a row, I think, there's a different conversation that we need to have here. And I don't think it would be acceptable for anybody within the team to come out and say, well, listen, we have 1.3 million in general allocation money, and in the summer, we're going to make a move. So just let us lose 15 games in a row. Should be fine, because in the summer, we have 1.3 million in general allocation money. You think that'll be fun?
Jose,
You think that
Jose.
that'd
I
be
don't
the
think
right
that
mindset?
I don't think that they're planning to lose games. I think that
They're throwing away the season.
Jose.
They are.
I don't agree
Franco,
with
they
that.
are,
I don't agree with
especially
that.
because they said at the beginning, we are good with bringing Sergey. They traded Demian Lowe. We don't need, we're good in defense. We have this, we have that. And they are bringing a central defender.
So, hold on. So,
That is considered one of the top central defenders of the league. So what is it? Who is not going to stay multiple years here? So what is it? What are you doing?
So I mean, I can
You're
I
throwing
can
away
dive
the
in.
season,
No,
right? Because
no.
that doesn't make sense.
No.
Because Kamal Miller wants to leave in June or in whatever time he gets
So Kamal
enough.
Miller, he has a contract through 2023 with an option year included for 2024. So whether he wants to go or not, unless he's pulling Kyle Larin or why am I blank? Oh, Fabian Castillo. Unless he's just like going to Camilo Sanveso, where these players just walked out of the clubs that the MLS clubs that they had contracts with, and say, oh, forget it, I'm going to join this team. Oh, another player, Kaku Romero, who also just left, at one point. I mean, it's happened. But unless Kamal Miller does that, he could be with Inter Miami for the better part of the next 2 seasons. Now, I don't think they're throwing away the season. Jose, I would counter what you said with, well, what if that 1.3 million helps bring in Sergio Busquets, who then helps bring in Messi, right? And then we're getting into
not happening. That is nonsense.
So then we're getting into a bigger conversation, right? Which we don't need to dive into at this point. But that I do think
throwing away the season waiting for him. They will still be. Listen, if you want to win, you don't start winning in June.
Exactly.
Right? If you want to win a championship, you start with a winning team from the get-go. You don't wait for one player to make things happen.
Listen, I think the odds that you have to take that chance of bringing in Messi. You have to take the chance of bringing Messi.
They are not bringing Messi, Franco.
But if they do bring Messi, there's no guarantee that Messi will be, the answer to everything around Inter Miami right now.
I'm not saying that, but I think if you have an opportunity as an organization, there's only so many clubs out there in the world who can bring in a Messi, realistically. Is Inter Miami a realistic option in the conversation?
No, it's not.
You don't think so, Andrea? I do. If you see Jorge Mas with Messi's entourage...
Jorge Mas is no one in the football world.
Andrea,
Jorge Mas is no one. You have Laporta.
If you saw Jorge Mas... Andrea, if you see Jorge Mas with Messi's entourage...
Jorge Mas is no one in the football world.
Andrea, if you see Jorge Mas with Messi's entourage during the World Cup, I think that means something. I don't think that you get to be around Messi's entourage. Andrea, you don't get to be around Messi's entourage at that level during that moment.
Franco, that doesn't mean anything.
I disagree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that there is a chance that he comes. Whether he does or doesn't, that will be proven in a few months' time. I think there's a chance.
I think it's unfair for Inter Miami fans to keep having this conversation because all sign points that it's not happening. It's not happening. So we have to be sincere with them. It can be a possibility, yes, of course, but it is a possibility now that we can have a hurricane coming to hit South Florida. It's a possibility, yes, it could happen. That is the same thing as right now wasting time saying, oh, they're collecting money to get Messi.
No, they could be collecting money to bring in another player who can help attract Messi, make Inter Miami more attractive option. But listen, okay, your point
for a team to aspire to that.
But
that
listen,
you are throwing away your season.
Messi is a generational talent. He is arguably the greatest player of all time. I think if you have the chance, you've got to try to take that chance. Now, regardless, let's move away from the Messi talk, because that's not what we need to focus on this week's show. Because I think the overall point is something that we should discuss. And it's something you've mentioned, Andrea, not only on this week's pod already, but in previous pods. And I don't disagree with you. There is a lot of talk from Inter Miami that they want to develop young players. They talk about homegrowns and young players, mostly homegrowns. it's only been 3 years and some change. There's been homegrown signings, but no one's really broken through. By and large, Inter Miami does not develop, to this point, has not developed young players to the point where they're getting regular first team minutes and performing at higher levels. Now, I've said this dating back to last year. I think Inter Miami, because of the type of organization that it is not going to be that. They can say all they want PR and publicly about how they want to do this and that, but they are a must-win now type of organization. They're not an organization that is going to...
What type of organization is Inter Miami? What type of... I mean, it's one thing what the owners say during a press conference, and then an organization is what they show on the field. And Inter Miami has no relation at this point to winning games, tournaments consistently. They have a preseason tournament trophy, and that's about it. So what is Inter Miami at this point? I don't think we have figured out what is Inter Miami.
Okay, well, we're not...
If you ask owners around the league, if they want to win tournaments, every owner will tell you they want to win the Champions League, they want to win MLS Cup, they want to win Leagues Cup, they want to win Campeones Cup, they want to win everything. And that doesn't make a team a winning team. So, I mean, I think they have ways to go. And I think it's just too soon to figure out what they are. Like, for real.
Jose,
not what they say they are,
Jose, what are the expectations for Inter Miami, right? The expectations are for this team to compete for titles. That's the expectation.
But how? How did you get to that point? How did you get the expectation of Inter Miami winning titles if they barely made it to the playoffs? They barely had a competitive roster. From day one, they had trouble signing DPs from day one. From day one. And you know how important DPs are in MLS. So why would you expect them to win? At what point during an MLS season did you expect Inter Miami to play the final? At what point?
I am not expecting them to play in the final, but that's what they expect from themselves. And this is not a team, this is not an organization that is like, all right, 5 years from now, we're going to compete for a trophy. We're going to build a young roster and a young nucleus and a young core, and that's what we're going to compete with for titles down the road. This is a team that signs older players. Gonzalo Higuain was not a young player. Blaise Matuidi was not a young player. Rodolfo Pizarro was not a young player when they signed them. Alejandro Pozuelo last year wasn't a young player. They bring in more proven players to try to win now. Now, Bryce Duke is no longer with the team because the team is trying to win now. They could have said no to that 1.3 million.
Trying to win now.
Oh, no.
Franco, no.
With that. I do not agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
I think they probably thought it was a good deal.
Listen,
because of the 1.3 million for them to get about to send Bryce Duke to someplace else, and maybe they're thinking about bringing a DP 10 like they did with Pozuelo last year or something similar to that. But I don't think that tells you. I mean, I see no relationship between them. Wanting to win now.
Look at the signings, Jose. Look at the signings over the few years. Jovan Jones, Ryan Shawcross, Federico Higuain, Kieran Gibbs. Are these young players that they've signed? No. And these are players that, despite them signing players in the academy, Ian Frey, okay, he was injured. He's been injured. Noah Allen. He's injured this year. Last year he wasn't injured, and he played in the beginning due to circumstance, and then we didn't hear from him or see him on the field much of any part of the rest of the year. Edison Ascona, where is he right now? Right now, today, where is he right now?
With a national team playing against Brazil.
With the under-20 Dominican national team. So he's not even in the first team picture. This is not a team that is built on, at least right now, on developing young players. This is a team that's trying to win now. Now, whether that changes or not, and whether we can agree about the execution of that philosophy and that approach, fine. I understand all of that. But this is a team that's trying to win today. That's why the players they bring in that are starters, Campana may be one example of a young player that they signed. and that he panned out and that they brought him back. Are there others? Are there others? Are there other young players that you could point to? Yedlin's not a young player. Serhii Kristoff's not a young player. Christopher McVay is not really a young player. Kamal Miller's not a young player. Gene Mota and Gregory weren't young players when they were added. This is not a team. It's not an organization, for whatever they say publicly, that is trying to do what FC Dallas and Philadelphia Union have done. Is that like something they would like to do in the background of trying to build a winner? Yes, I think so. Yes, it'd be nice to have young players come up regularly and play for the first team and help be part of that identity. But right now, we have not seen that. We have not seen it.
To be fair, the one person that started this conversation, because, before we're going to get young players and develop them and, have them play with the first team and then move on to the highest level, to the bigger leagues. Before the conversation, everybody was thinking Inter Miami is the team for the top players in the world. But the one that got this conversation started was David Beckham, who's barely even around anymore.
Jose.
So how seriously can we take that?
Jose, listen. Those comments to me always rang hollow. Those comments to me were David Beckham, to me, not inside information, just my supposition. Those were David Beckham comments posturing for local politicians to help give him a stadium. That's what I think that was. I don't think that there was actual meaning behind the first few years we're going to have all these academy players playing in the first team. Maybe that's part of a longer term strategy, but right now, to this point in Inter Miami's existence, no, not even close. Not even close.
I agree with you, Franco. But the part that I don't agree with you, it's the win now.
So you think that they're planning to win 3 years from now? That's their vision. They're trying to win 3 years. They're not trying to win now or next year. They're trying to win 3 years from now, 5 years from now.
I think next year would be the first year that they will really go for it. I think the next year is the year for Inter Miami to get things on track, because I think they've done the work. They're trying to get all the pieces that they want here long term, and next year with no sanctions, I think that would be the first real year that we might be able to see that Jorge Mas mentality that you want, the winning mentality. Right now, I don't think they try to win. Right now, it's just continuing with the process, and the players that bring in, all the names that you mentioned, those are names that you're not going to win anything with them. I mean, they're good assets, like the good players. They have good experience at times. But okay, let's look at Kieran Gibbs. Let's look at Shawcross. Did you really expect to win MLS Cup and have Shawcross and Kieran Gibbs be at the top of the list in all stats in MLS? I mean, that's a little unrealistic. I think it's going to take some time for them to come to a new league. There's not a lot of expectations. So I agree with you again, but I just don't agree with the part that you say win now. I don't think they are that ambitious right now, and they know they're not ready to get at that level.
So if you agree that they're not a win now team, if you agree that they are not at this point in their stage or in their existence, a team that's developing young players, but you also don't think they're a win now team, what kind of team are they then, according to you? What kind of team do you think they are?
A normal MLS team that is just existing.
They are a middle-of-the-pack team, and this is the perfect example as to why promotion and relegation is holding on this league. Because at Inter Miami, they have the luxury of being a middle-of-the-pack. They have a luxury in the middle-of-the-pack team because
I don't agree with that.
They are.
They have sanctions that they're dealing with. It's not like they're playing with a full deck of cards here. So I don't think that I think if there were no sanctions, I think they would be one of the biggest spenders in the league, and I think that they would be trying to win now. Don't forget, in 2020, they were, I think, if not the most expensive team, or the second most expensive team in the entire league in terms of how much money they invested in that roster. So,
and they did a horrible job with that amount of money.
That's different. But that's a different argument. That's not the same as saying that they're a win now team. The execution of the plan might have been terrible, and it was terrible. And the leaders at that point got let go. But anyway, we're revisiting the past. Let's move forward, Jose.
For now, I guess we can say they have owners that are willing to spend, but I don't think we can say Inter Miami is a team with a winning mentality because they just haven't been able to do it. I mean, if somebody asked me to prove why Inter Miami, why do
It's a
they have
winning team.
a winning mentality? How many wins do I have to show? How many trophies?
Just
What?
because the execution can be terrible does not mean that that's not what the plan or the idea or the identity, the desired identity is.
Okay, show
That
me
is an
what.
excuse every
Show,
team in MLS
show,
uses, Franco.
No, Andrea.
show me what they.
Yes.
If they are a winning
Little
mentality,
team.
what
Did
do
Andrea
I
just get
have?
sick in the middle of the podcast? What happened, Andrea? What happened to your voice?
I am still having some after COVID effects. So
Your voice changed mid podcast. What happened?
Yes.
I was like, oh man, did Andrea she got into it? Now she's like losing her voice. All right, well we'll try to keep the decibels to a level that you can speak at. All right, so let's move forward. Let's move forward because there's still a good few things to talk about. Kamal Miller has arrived, like you guys mentioned, Canadian international center back. Again, has contract through 2023, option for 2024. There have been plenty of reports that he wants to go to Europe. He's 25 years old, so not young, but not old. He's entering the prime of his career, or he should be entering the prime of his career in the next year or two. Jose, from what we know, from what we've seen, he is a center back that has composure on the ball. He can bring the ball forward. So Inter Miami is adding that to their repertoire now. I do think, although he's a defender, that his addition is in part to help add to a team that is looking to be good with the ball and attack. This is not Aaron Long. This is not a center back who is maybe solid defending and not great with the ball. He is, and I'm not saying, listen, let me take that back. I don't think Kamal Miller is great with the ball, but I think he's good with the ball by MLS standards, and Inter Miami is adding that. Now, with that said, quick question for you both. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And we'll start with Andrea so that she can clear her throat while Jose and I probably argue. 5-man backline or 4-man backline? Does Kamal Miller's arrival to you signal Inter Miami is going to stick with the 4 at the back and drop probably Christopher McVey? Or do they go with 5 at the back with 3 center backs, which would then be comprised of clearly, probably, Sergi Christoph, Christopher McVey, and Kamal Miller?
I think the one getting dropped is going to be McVey. If you're bringing a player like Kamal, that he's one of the top defenders in the league, I will say. He's not Puyol, for the older generations who understand who Puyol is. He's not Puyol, but he is good in the league. He has experience. He plays for the national team. So I think they're bringing a player that can be at that level that Sergi is in. Because clearly, I think Phil has seen and his staff has seen that McVey has not been having a good season. This season, he has been having a lot of mistakes during the games. So I think maybe they are thinking and they are looking at Kamal and saying, okay, this could be a good addition to solidify our back 4 and to get someone that makes a great pairing with Sergi, that brings stability, that has qualities that can pair well with Sergi.
So you think 4-man backline? They're going to stay with the 4. Jose, your thoughts, quickly.
I say they go to 5. I'd say they go to 5 in the back. I think, with you bringing Kamal Miller and with Christoph, I think McVey will look a lot better, just like, Makun did a few years ago. I think I think that would make sense, honestly. I mean, that would prevent you from losing as many games. And I think that's what they're trying to do right now. They want to stay in the hunt and, playing good defense. That might be something that they need right now. That's my thought. And it might not be great because people want to see them score goals. But the reality is that they do need at some point, to stop the bleeding. They have to stop the bleeding, especially on road games. And, I think that's a possibility.
Something that Rodolfo Pizarro and Phil Neville, if I'm not mistaken, earlier today, Wednesday, said during the availability in different moments is that back to basics. They used that phrase. One in English, one in Spanish, of course. Pizarro in Spanish, Phil Neville in English. So I don't necessarily disagree that the back five is in the cards for Inter Miami. But I'm with Andrea on this one, that I think that they're going to stick, at least to begin with, that back four. I think Miller slots in for McVay. McVay hasn't necessarily played all that well next to Serhii Christoph. He's had lapses in, I think, practically every game. Some have proven costly, some have not. So I think he's there to upgrade the center back position with and without the ball, but with the emphasis still being on Inter Miami being an attack-minded team. So I think they stick with four, though I don't discard the possibility that at some point or at different games, we can see a back five. But I think to start, the idea is back four. That's just my supposition. All right, another player that was officially brought on board since the last pod we recorded is Dixon Arroyo, the Ecuadorian defensive midfielder who signed a 1-year deal with a team option for 2024. We talked about him last week, Jose. There's been a good bit of talk, at least in Ecuadorian press, about his arrival and how it came to be. He had kind of a falling out with Emelec due to I don't know if contractual disputes, but payment disputes and things of that nature. And then that led to him being, reclamando, complaining and trying to make a stand behind the scenes. That eventually led to him being separated from the group, according to reports. And then that eventually led to him, exiting the team. And it was notable to me that during his introductory press conference earlier today on Wednesday, he said, con el equipo con quien jugaba o con el equipo con quien estaba. Which translates to, with the team I last played for, with the team I was last with. He never named Emelec by name in the press conference. And I think that was telling. That there's definitely... He didn't leave Emelec on a high. He left Emelec clearly in not the best way. But anyway, he's coming in clearly to help replace Gregory as the 6, like we say in English, or el cinco, like we say in Spanish, the 5. Hopefully that doesn't confuse listeners, but numerically, in terms of the positions, it's just done differently in different parts of the country. All the same, 6'5", whatever, say cinco, 6'5", it's just to say he's a defensive midfielder. Replacing the injured Gregory. But does he play like Gregory? We'll find out starting probably this weekend. Phil Neville said he's a major doubt because of paperwork terms or paperwork that hasn't come through yet. I don't believe that one bit. I think he's playing this weekend. I think when Phil Neville tries to say that, he's a major doubt, I think it's him just bluffing, and I think we will absolutely see Dixon Arroyo in the starting lineup on Saturday against Houston Dynamo.
I don't think we're going to see him. Not because of that, but because he needs to get his paperwork. He needs to get his transfer. He needs to get everything in line to play. And it's very difficult to do here. It's not like you're going to get it
Andrea,
in a week.
He's already training with the team, and he's been training with the team since last week. Kamal Miller is in South Florida. He has not been training with the team. There's been no public images of him in Inter Miami gear. Nothing. So I believe that Kamal Miller probably isn't playing this weekend.
Yeah.
Which is something Phil Neville said Wednesday. But I don't believe for a second that Dixon Arroyo is not. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see on Saturday, but I don't. When Phil really tries to sell it and he tries to lay it on thick, I have a hard time believing it. So I think Dixon Arroyo plays, and I think he starts on Saturday. Now, what kind of player should we expect? Are we going to see a like-for-like player like Gregory, or are we going to see a different type of defensive midfielder? Because it's not like every 6 or every cinco or every defensive midfielder plays exactly the same. Listen, I'll say this. I haven't seen him play a whole lot besides some highlight footage that you can find out on the World Wide Web. So we'll see. But, there was a lot of talk today about how he resembles Gregory. Pizarro said physically they have some similarities. I think he's a little bit smaller in frame than Gregory. Maybe not as physically robust or strong. I'm not saying he's weak by any means, but that does not mean that he's going to play the defensive midfielder position the same way that Gregory does. And I asked Dixon Arroyo, futbolísticamente, from a more soccer standpoint type of question, how would you describe your playing style? And he went into talking about, breaking things up, but, then also, giving the team a clean build out. So he went into some detail. I followed up by saying, te gusta jugar al choque, which helped me translate in English. It means, do you like to get physical? Like get into tackles, things of that nature, right? That's how you would roughly translate it, guys, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And he said, not really. He said, if I have to, then I'll slide, I'll do what I need to do. But he wasn't like, I love to get stuck in. No, I love to get physical. I love to be combative in that move. He didn't say that. Gregory is that. I think what Inter Miami's getting is a different type of player. A player that's going to be tasked with, breaking things up and getting physical from time to time, just part of the nature of the position. But I think there's getting a player that's going to be more reading of the game, more anticipating, cutting off passing lanes, and playing in that way. Again, I could be wrong. We'll see possibly as soon as Saturday. But I think that based on what he said, I think those are his virtues, those are his strengths, and I think that's what we will see over the long term, especially if he's going to be successful.
There's one thing that I think we forgot to mention about Dixon Arroyo, and it's that he did sign through 2023, and then there's an option for 2024, but it is a club option.
Right.
So to me, that was something interesting because unless there's an X amount of games that he'll play, and then the team will be forced to pick up the option in 2024. There are not a lot of guarantees in that contract for Dixon. It's like basically, it's just a few months.
He's a rental.
It feels more. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess he was desperate to get a team here in the States or someplace else to continue to play.
So, Jose, an interesting anecdote to add to what you're saying is that he has vacationed in Florida quite often, both South Florida and Orlando, and he commented this after the press conference. We were able to talk as we were walking out of the press conference room, and he said when he was here in December in Florida, and he told his wife something along the lines of like, man, it would be great to live there. And look, the situation fell perfectly for him. At the time when he was having issues with Emelec, Inter Miami lost its captain and defensive midfielder, and it needed to plug that hole. And the timing just happened to work out for both parties. So, yes, I agree with you, and I know that you were harping on that last week when the news came out of the terms of the deal. There's not a whole lot of guarantees for Dixon Arroyo. Might not have a whole of a long tenure in South Florida, unless he plays very, very well this season, and then that option is triggered for next year. But for him, it helps, one, fill a professional need, and two, achieve a personal desire. So I think it works for him. We'll see how he performs on the field. We'll see how it works for Inter Miami. All right, let's switch gears to what's ahead. Because Phil Neville today spoke about, when you asked him, Jose, it's a pivotal week. And it is a pivotal week, starting with Saturday's road game against the Houston Dynamo. Inter Miami, in the course of 8 days, will play 3 road games. A struggling, sliding Inter Miami will play 3 road games. 2 of those matches are against MLS clubs. 1 is against the lower division fellow Miami team in Miami FC in the U.S. Open Cup, a do-or-die match. Win or go home. It's a big week for Inter Miami. It's a big week to see what this team is made of, how they respond, how they either start to dig themselves out of this hole or how they sink further into it. So, Jose, I'll go back to you here. What do you expect from Inter Miami going into this week? And what results do they need? What results would you be satisfied with over these next 3 road games? Winning away from home is never easy. And the Miami FC game, they're in South Florida, but can't forget that they're going to be traveling, little preparation. So what kind of week do you expect from Inter Miami? And what would make you conforme? What would make you satisfied with the direction of the team?
I don't know if satisfied is the right word because,
About the direction. If they're improving, if they're getting better, if they're starting to make progress to get out of the funk and the slide that they're
in. That's an interesting question because I've been thinking about those 3 games, and I'll tell you what I've been thinking. I think they will win against Miami FC. I think they can win against Miami FC, but I don't see them winning against Houston or Columbus. Just don't see it. So along those lines, I guess I think it'll be according to plan if that's exactly what happens. I mean, do you expect Inter Miami at this point to win on the road? Houston, they are not, one of the top teams in the league, but they have been winning games at home lately. So I think against Houston it's going to be tough for them to win. I think against Miami FC, just because Miami FC is really struggling to score as well, and they just can't win games at FIU, I think they'll end up winning that game. If they play, an okay team, if they decide to think that they are way better than Miami FC and they start playing, academy guys or reserve players, then they might run into trouble. And I see them losing the game again over the weekend against Columbus. I think Columbus is a better team as well. So I don't know if I did answer your question. It was really.
So you said they're beating Miami, losing the 2 MLS games. So that would mean that they, according to you, they would break their franchise record losing streak and go on a 7-game, losing streak.
Yeah.
So, is that enough? Is that enough to be okay with the direction the team's headed in?
Oh, no. But I mean, you cannot be okay with it. I mean, right now, you cannot be okay right
now. What do you have to? So what would they need to do for you to be okay with the direction they're headed in terms of results, not performance, results?
I think they need to get a new head coach.
I'm talking about results. Over this next week, Jose, stay with me here. What does Inter Miami, from a result standpoint, need to do to leave you feeling okay with progress? You said that you expect them to beat Miami. Okay, got that.
Yeah, I expect.
But what do they have to do in the other 2 games? Is it draw? Is it win 1? Is it not lose both and just get something out of the 2? Road games in MLS are not easy, and Inter Miami's not been a great team away from home. So, again, question, simple. For you, what does Inter Miami have to do in this stretch, in this next week, to have you feeling more optimistic about the future and the direction that the team is headed in?
I wouldn't feel optimistic even if they win both games, to tell you the truth.
So a team that doesn't win away from home, if they win 2 games away from home to end this losing streak in MLS,
that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that they
those games. Mm-hmm. It depends on how they win them.
Yeah.
Like if they have good performance, there's a glimpse that I think I will go back several times this year from preseason, from that game against Austin.
Jose.
There's in some of those games there's a glimpse of what this team was capable of early on, and we never saw that again. So if they do that again against Houston, they do it against Columbus, and they can do it for more than 15 minutes, then they'll have a chance.
Jose,
so
I'm not asking for performance. I'm asking just quickly and easily, simply, what do they have to do from a result standpoint to have you feeling more optimistic about the future? You already said that you think they're going to beat Miami FC. So, okay, so what results do they need in the 2 away games in MLS play?
I guess 2 draws would be But still, I won't feel
If
optimistic.
they
To be
draw,
honest.
you wouldn't feel
You're
optimistic.
trying to force me to say.
Yes,
that
that is what Franco wants.
I'm not trying to
That is
force you
why
into
I told
anything.
you.
I want an answer. You're not giving me an answer. Listen,
Franco,
I'll
I
answer
told
the
you
question.
already. Even if they win both games,
I
it
think-
won't mean that they are gonna be a better team.
Andrea,
I don't know. I think if they win-
you are tired or something, because there's no way that if Inter Miami, who's on a 5-game losing streak, who's near the bottom of the overall MLS
That is
standings,
the problem.
No,
They're
Andrea,
if they win 2 games, then you're gonna say, "Oh, they're back."
I'm
They're
not
good.
saying they're back. I would say they're making progress. They're starting to dig themselves out of the hole. You win 2 games on the road back to back in MLS against those opponents who you guys, Jose just mentioned that Houston's doing surprisingly well at home under Ben Olsen and Columbus Crew team that has Wilfred Nancy as their head coach. Like those are not bad results if you win both of those games. Those are pretty good results, even though one's not in conference.
That doesn't mean that Inter Miami has solved their problem.
I'm not saying, Andrea, I'm not. But no one said.
What you're asking.
No, that's not what I'm asking, because I didn't say. Does that mean that everything's good and the ship has been righted? Does that mean that there's progress? Absolutely. If they win both games, that's progress.
I don't know. They won last year against the under-16 team in Seattle, and
exactly. That is what I mean. That is what I'm trying to tell Franco, and he doesn't
depends on how
get it.
Jose,
I think it depends on how they win.
Jose, like the context matters. Context matters. They are on a 5-game losing streak. You just said that this is not a team that's in the must-win now mode, and yet you're saying that if they win 2 games on the back of a 5-game lose. Okay, all right, fine. We'll agree to disagree.
If you get what would be a good result? They get 2 draws. That would be good for them. But that doesn't mean that all their problems are solved,
but who
or
is
that they are making
that?
progress.
Who is saying that all their problems are solved? Because listen, for me, progress. For me, progress will be
5 and tying 2 games. That is not progress for me.
For me, progress from what we've seen from them is winning one of those 2 away games plus the Miami FC game. They need to win 2 out of those 3 games for me to feel a little bit more optimistic. A little bit more optimistic. Not, oh my gosh, they're going to win MLS Cup, but a little bit more optimistic about the direction they're headed in. If they can win, absolutely the Open Cup game, that's a must win, because it's a win or go home match, knockout match. That one they absolutely have to win, and then 1 out of the 2 away from home in MLS play. So either beat the Houston Dynamo or beat the Columbus Crew. I don't expect them to win all 3. No. That'd be a heck of a week for Inter Miami if they could do that. But I think winning 2 out of those 3, but one of those has to be the Open Cup, I think that is a sign of progress. If you lose the Open Cup, but you win the 2 MLS games, I don't think that. I think that the blow from losing to your crosstown rival in the Derby, I think that's too significant to ignore. So
I think what I would say is I need a bigger sample size. I think it's a big week because it's 3 games and all of them on the road. But for me to feel optimistic that they're not just gonna win 2 out of 3 and then drop 5 again in a row, I need more than 1 week. I need more than those 3 games. And I need to see how they win those games if they end up winning them. I think 1 week.
So no, you gave me no answer. You're giving me a roundabout answer. All right, no problem. You don't want to answer it. I can't force you. I won't twist your arm, Jose.
I can't. I just can't.
So the Houston Dynamo are in 7th place in the Western Conference. They have a 3-win, 1-draw, 3-loss record. They've scored 9 goals, given up 8. So their numbers aren't overly impressive. It's
a Ben Olsen team.
It's a Ben Olsen team. I mean, I think it's possibly a winning game for Inter Miami. I'm not saying they're the favorites by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't think so.
But I think it's a winnable game. If they play better, if they simplify things, and if
Houston
players
Dynamo
perform.
has one thing that is 1,000 times better than Inter Miami, and that is why they are favorites in this match, and it's their midfield with Carrasquilla and Hector Herrera. They are playing well. They are both good players. Hector Herrera is old now, but he has quality, and Carrasquilla is, if not the best midfielder in the league, one of the best midfielders in the league. I don't think he's going to be here for more than this season. And that is the reason why Houston Dynamo are favorites in this game, because Inter Miami doesn't have the quality to stop those two players in this in with what they've shown in the past 5 games. Unfortunately, they're gonna get dominated in the middle, so it's gonna be really hard for Inter Miami to go to Houston and get a result. Even though Houston is not in the league because they have defensive problems, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at Houston, out of the last 4 games, they dropped one.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I mean, if we look at the last 4 games for Inter Miami, we already know what it means.
Exactly, yeah.
So Houston playing at home, I think they're in better. The state of mind right now for Houston, it's not what it was early on when Ben Olsen couldn't win a game. So the last 4 games for them, if you look at those 4 games, then, I mean, they're looking better right now. I mean, how many teams are looking worse than Inter Miami? How many teams have a 5-game losing streak?
Sporting Kansas City.
Oh, well, there you go. 5-year contract to the head coach.
Well, listen, if you look at Houston's last 5 games, let's compare it to Inter Miami's. They most recently tied the New York Red Bulls 1-1. Before that, and that was on the road. Before that, they beat the LA Galaxy 3-0. Prior to that, they lost on the road to San Jose Earthquakes. Prior to that, they beat New York City FC 1-0 at home. And the first of these last 5 matches, the one that took place on March 18th, they won at home 2-0 against Austin FC. So yes, they're in a better current state than Inter Miami. I do still think it's a game that Inter Miami can win. Does that mean I think that they will win? No, not necessarily, but I think that they can win. Key to the game. Jose, very quickly. Just key to the game.
Defense. Play defense. Wait for a counterattack, something, miracle, maybe a penalty, VAR, hand of God. Oh, well, that's unrelated to VAR.
You can't really do that anymore.
No, they just have to play good defense and wait for an opportunity and and capitalize. But other than that, I think they have to play good defense. That's the way to go for this team, right?
Defend resolutely and be opportunistic in the attack. Okay, that's Jose's key to the game. Andrea, your key to the game, and you cannot say the same thing as Jose.
Well, I told you already that I think that midfield is key for Houston Dynamo. So I would have to agree with Jose. Inter Miami cannot come to this game and try to win the ball against that midfield that Houston has. So they have to play to defend. They have to wait, counterattack, get some goals in set pieces or whatever they call it, tiros libres or whatever opportunity. But they need to be intelligent because in the state that they're in, their midfield will not win against the midfield that Houston has in this moment. So they need to be intelligent and defend.
I, once again, disagree with both of you. And I think that this team needs to score. They need to put that ball in the back of the net. That has been their biggest problem. It doesn't matter to me if they win this game 4-3, 3-2. They just need to win this game. If they give up goals at the back, but they pull out the 3 points, so be it. I'm okay with that. They need to be attack-minded, and they need to try to go for it, and they need to try to win. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with your guys' premise and, maybe trying to scrap one out there 1-0 and try to, or 1-1 and just try to get something out of it, to stop the bleeding. I can understand that. But I think they need to attack. And I think they just need to put that ball in the back of the net. Now, it's a vague response or key to the game, but I think they have to be attack-minded. That's the key to the game for me. If they're attack-minded, then they have a chance. Of course, they have to put the ball in the back of the net, but I don't think going the route that you guys are saying, la ratoneada, as Peruvians would say, playing like a mouse, scurrying back in the hole and then coming out on occasion, I don't think that that's a recipe for success. I don't think that that's going to give you the best chance of winning. I think if you attack...
That's a recipe to stop the bleeding.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Not losing this game is almost as important as winning it.
I think they can win this game, though. I think they can win this game. And I think if they go attack-minded and they get good performances out of their attackers, then they can win this game. So that's for me.
I just don't see the coaching staff taking that risk, to be honest.
Listen, there was something that Campana said today. There was something that Campana said today that stayed with me, and that he mentioned something about him and Joseph, and it was a short snippet to a longer response about the attack. But that to me made me believe that I think they're both starting on Saturday. And yes, players like coaches can try to throw you off by saying things like that. I mean, Phil Neville's like the expert at trying to do that, whether it works or not, his execution. But I don't think Campana was trying to be clever. I think he just kind of said matter-of-factly that Joseph and I are talented and blah, blah, blah. So I think you're going to see two forwards, and I think that they've got to score and be attack-minded. I don't think being conservative here is the way to go. Just my opinion. Jose.
I don't think I never doubted that if Campana is fit enough to start like he did the last game, and Joseph, is fit as well. There's no other choice, is it?
Listen. Phil Neville said after the FC Dallas game that changes were coming to the starting lineup. He was asked today by Michelle Kaufman, our friend at the Miami Herald, about that today during the pregame press conference, and Phil Neville again said 100% that there's changes coming. We'll see. I mean, Schneider-Borgelin.
DJ Dos Santos will be in the bench, and Nick Marsman injured. But there's one.
Listen, I think Arroyo will be at that game.
There's another one. There's two more. So now you have three. I mean, come on. They're not going to bench Joseph. That's where you're going. They're not going to bench Joseph.
Will they? I don't think so. Should they? Should they? I think so. I think they should. Will they? I would not bet on that. All right, formation, and then we're wrapping up this segment. Jose, actually, I'll go first. I think they go 4-4-2 diamond. With Arroyo in there, 4-4-2 diamond. We see it at last in a regular season game from the start with the personnel or much of the personnel that we expected when preseason was going on. Jose, you're going to say 5-3-2?
No. I think they're going to play with 5 in the back once Kamal Miller is eligible. For this weekend, yes, I would agree. 4-4-2, without a doubt. I would say 4-4-2, but not as aggressive. I don't think it will be necessarily a diamond, but I would go with more like a flat 4-4-2.
So in that, who starts in your midfield? Because the back four is pretty straightforward. So who starts in the midfield?
Well, it seems like Robert Taylor will start regardless. But I would say, I'll go. I think we know the back line. DeAndre, even though he's playing
I just said
tonight.
That.
So DeAndre, I would say McVeigh, Christoph, and Negri. And then in the middle, I would say on the right side, Taylor. Oh, I should say Mota and Arroyo, and Stefanelli on the left side, no Pizarro. And at the top, Joseph and Campana.
Okay, so not many changes at all then to the personnel, according to what you're projecting.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that.
Okay.
No.
Andrea, what formation do we see?
Yeah, I agree with Jose and you, 4-4-2, but I think instead of Robert Taylor, I think Pizarro is starting. And Arroyo is coming in, and with Joseph and Campana at the top.
I think Robert Taylor is starting, just based on what he said, what Phil Neville said today. Phil Neville said that Robert Taylor's been dealing with an illness, but that he expects him to be available.
Well, you know how every coach has like a player or two that, they're favorites.
El consentido, el preferido.
Yeah. Yes, there's always in a team, there's always one or two players that they just get along with the coach, and the coach.
I don't think
really,
it's
really
getting along. I think it's just the coach rates and values things in that player that maybe he turns to him even if performance levels aren't great. There's in Spanish we say el consentido, el preferido. Yeah. How would you translate that to English? The preferred one. I wouldn't say the spoiled one, but
the teacher's pet.
Like Robert Taylor.
Teacher's pet.
Okay, teacher's pet. All right, that's a good
coach
good
pet.
Translation. Coach's pet. Okay, all right. So anyway, we'll leave it there. We've talked for a good bit, so we're going to push over our 110, but let's try to leave the last segment short. So we'll do a very quick Q&A, and our final thoughts, we'll do that after this. All right, Q&A time. Let's just do one question here because we've covered quite a bit this week. So Matthew Hanau asks, given the fact that we purchased Duke for $100,000 in GAM and Lassiter for $200,000 in GAM, then in about a year turned that to $1.3 million in GAM plus a top MLS defender, how would you grade Henderson's job at this transfer, A through F scale? So we've kind of answered this question in terms of if we think it's a good or bad trade, but let's grade it. Very quickly.
Give me the values for the letters because I'm not used to letters.
What, you didn't get graded in Honduras by letter grades? How'd you get graded?
No,
1 through 100?
Yes.
So 90 through 100 is an A. Or, yeah.
Okay.
80 through 89 is a B.
Okay. Perfect.
70
70
through 79, and then an F is 59 and below. So D is 60 through 69.
D is 60. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I will say I give it an A. Based on my perception of what I think Bryce Duke will turn out to be, based on what Ariel Lassiter is and his lack of minutes, what they got in return. We'll see how they use it, and then, that will impact overall how I view this trade, of course. So the grade could drop. But right now, today, and they get a center back who can help play the style they want to play, I give it an A. Jose.
I'll give them a D.
Andrea.
I'll give them, I was going to say D, but Jose stole it, so I'm going to give them a C minus.
Man, after you guys said that was a bad trade, you giving them a D. I mean, D is a bad grade. C minus is not a great grade, but it's closer to passing.
Just because then you say that Jose and me say Jose and I or whatever it is say the same thing.
Miller, they're getting Kamal Miller.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised you guys didn't give him an F, based on how bad you guys made it out to be in that initial segment.
Kamal Miller would prevent them from losing, 2 or 3 games. So that's not bad. That's not bad.
All right. You know what? We'll do one more, and it comes from Floating Head of Death. And this one will be real quick, easy to answer, but I think it's a fair question. How can Duke play for Montreal already, but Miller can't play for Inter Miami yet a week later? So there you go. U.S. visa process now. It takes longer now. It's not as quick, even for a Canadian coming to the United States. It's just the way it is. It's been going on like this since the pandemic. The pandemic slowed things down in terms of the visa process. I know we're a few years removed from that, but it just hasn't been anywhere near as expeditious as it used to be. It does take a little bit more time. I think Kamal Miller will play at some point, probably during the 3 games and 8 day stretch. Just my supposition. But as of right now, he cannot play on Saturday. All right, that's it for the Q&A session. Very quick. Final thoughts. We'll go Jose, Andrea, and myself, and then we'll close out the pod after that. Jose.
My final thought is on Campana. I think we still need to give him a break. I think it's been way too long for him, without playing an official match. He mentioned this morning, about 5 months before the game 2 weeks ago. So, if the team's not scoring and he's not performing at a high level, I think it's not necessarily on him. And I think it's right about, just trying to take us through the process that he went through, because at the beginning of the season, we expected a lot from him. And I'm sure he had a lot of high expectations as well for this year. And, just being out for too long and, again, dealing with injuries, I think it's going to take some time for him to perform at a high level.
He's got to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy for Inter Miami to have any chance of getting something out of the season. Without him, I don't see the attack producing consistently enough, and I just don't see this team going very far without him. Not that they will go far with him, but I just don't think there's much of a chance. And something interesting that he said today, when I asked him about the injury, or maybe something that he didn't say, all he said was that it was a left calf injury. Same thing, essentially, that was written in the press release, in El Comunicado that Inter Miami released, before the season opener, or after the season opener, actually, it came out. Sounds to me, they didn't go into specifics, it sounds to me like he had a tear. Sounds to me, again, not information, just supposition. That's what it sounds like. He had a tear in his calf. He said it wasn't a contact injury. It was just something he felt while he was running. So sounds like he had a tear of some sorts, which of course, as we know, kept him out for several weeks. Andrea,
my final thought for this week is about Pizarro. Nothing new, right? But it was interesting to me. Pausa. I wanted to say, finally, we got to speak to Campana and Pizarro. I know I wasn't here last week, but I know Franco and Jose talked about that. They spoke today, both of them.
Maybe our cries were heard. Our public cries were heard, and the soccer heavens shine down on us with some Campana and Pizarro availability. No Joseph yet, though. No Joseph yet. Exactly. But maybe we'll get there soon enough.
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
When he scores.
When he scores, exactly. But it was interesting to me when you talked to Pizarro today, Franco, that he told you, reading in between the lines, that he thinks he needs to get a little bit more confidence. I don't think he's getting it at the moment. We were talking about the lineup, what we expect from the lineup. You both think he's going to the bench this weekend. So I guess he's going to continue to struggle with his confidence and with the relationship that he has with Phil. I don't think Phil trusts him, and he knows that Phil doesn't trust him to play in the position that he wants. So it's going to be interesting to see that develop. It's going to be interesting to see how that factors in with Inter Miami, because, listen, for me, the last game that he didn't start, when he came in, he changed the game. So I don't know what are the basis for Phil to keeping him on the bench, but he's the coach. He takes the decision, but clearly it is affecting his confidence.
So
right now.
I agree with that, and I'll add a couple things really quickly before my final thought, and I'll say that I agree with you that I do think that reading between the lines, although Rodolfo didn't say anything about Phil directly, I do think that that's what he's alluding to. Let's not forget that during the 2-game winning streak at the start of the season, one of Phil Neville's comments was that Pizarro feels like an important player, and he's in a different type of mindset and mood, when he feels like he's a 90-minute player. So if Pizarro doesn't have confidence right now, to me it says that it's because he doesn't feel like the coaching staff is giving him that confidence. No le están dando esa confianza. And you can look back at the last 3 games. He started 2 of them, and he was, if not the first sub, one of the early subs in both of those games, and then he was benched in the most recent match, something that we expected just based on what we were seeing from Phil Neville. To me, it's clear that Phil Neville has never really found the best use for Pizarro, nor the best position for Pizarro going back to 2021, and that he has never really been enamored with Pizarro's skill set, which is fair. But in doing that, Pizarro also hasn't been able to feel important often enough, which is what he needs, based on what we've heard for many years now, to succeed. So I think that is definitely a part of it. Andrea, you said that I think Pizarro gets benched this weekend. I don't think that. I think Pizarro starts this weekend. But
didn't you say Robert started?
I think Robert starts on the right. That doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think Pizarro starts somewhere in the midfield.
So who will be your midfield?
If they're going 4-4-2 diamond, Arroyo at the 6, Jean Mota on one side, Robert Taylor on the other, and Rodolfo Pizarro as the 10.
So you bench Stefanelli?
I think Stefanelli's going to get dropped.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Okay.
But I agree with you overall. I think that the dynamic and the relationship between Neville and Pizarro, I'm not saying it's tumultuous or problematic, but I think that they aren't necessarily the biggest lovers of one another. Like they're not,
I'm
head over heels with one another.
Yes,
He's not the teacher's pet. I'll put it to you like that.
Yes, I'm gonna tell you a phrase in Spanish that means "lo que se ve no se pregunta," and you clearly can see that. So that is what I meant when saying reading between the lines. It's a conclusion that I get hearing them both talk about each other.
Correct. Or, I mean, well, not like he was talking about him, but lo que se ve no se pregunta means translate it for the people. It's a bilingual podcast, Andreita.
Yeah, you are the translator. Me translating.
Yes, you.
Okay, I say things in Spanish and you need to translate, please. The native English speaker is what you don't ask, but you can see, something like that.
Correct. Which I think it's clear. You know, when you see Phil Neville pull Pizarro early in 2 games and then bench him the next game, clearly he hasn't loved what he has seen out there. Which, fair or not, you know, that will obviously impact Pizarro, who by all accounts is pretty temperamental and big on how he values or how he feels valued within the team. All right, my final thought, 2 things very quickly. Inter Miami released a new jersey. It will be born on Saturday against the Houston Dynamo. It is the One Planet jersey. It's part of their 3-year initiative to have jerseys that talk about the environment and things of that nature. It's a baby blue with navy blue marks all over it, so it's not very Inter Miami, but again, none of these jerseys really have been. They've all been different colors that don't really go with the team color scheme. You can see it on Miami Total Football Substack. Yes, the pictures that Inter Miami put out underwater, once again, very cool, but you don't get a really good look at what the jersey looks like. You see a model swimming underwater with
a crop top.
with sharks and the shots are great. I'm not hitting on the shots, but you can't see the jersey. So you can see the jersey on Miami Total Football's Instagram, which is MIA Total Football. It doesn't look bad. I don't think it's a bad jersey. It just, doesn't say anything.
And it's fitting for what we lived in South Florida this week.
Right, with the flooding and the no gas. My other final thought. Drake Callender and DeAndre Yedlin right now are with the U.S. men's national team. DeAndre Yedlin started, actually. He's playing as we speak. I do think, and I did ask Phil Neville this today, I do think it was, a bit of a risk to let them go. This is not an FIFA-sanctioned match. Now, do the MLS overlords require MLS teams to release their players? I mean, they probably have twist their arm a good bit to ensure that happens. But, I think it was...
Of course. Phil 2 weeks ago was saying, Robert Taylor, and he was playing official matches, and now he's happy because these 2 go on a cash grab of a game.
It is definitely a cash grab, 100%. I agree with that. And I do think it's a bit of a risk that, to have them go.
Especially with Marchman injured. I understand Callender getting his first call-up, but it's really dangerous position for Inter Miami.
Yeah, because they're not in a position where they don't have the luxury to send 2 players for a midweek match.
Exactly.
When
they don't have a replacement for Yedlin, and they don't have a replacement for Callender now that Nick Marchman is injured. So
I think Harvey Neville could start on Saturday. I think we could see that.
Yeah, it could be a possibility because Yedlin playing today, starting today, and then traveling back to Houston. Yeah, well, let's see.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's where my final thought will wrap up. It's like, it's probably great for their confidence. Phil Neville did a good job of pointing out the positives of having them go, especially for Callender, and the fact that he's been called up and he'll get his first experience at the national team level. That's all great and good, but this is not an international window. This is, like you just said, a cash grab. And yes, Drake Callender, it's great for him that he got his first call-up. But he could have gotten his first call-up at a different time when it's actually a FIFA-sanctioned window, when maybe Inter Miami's not playing on the weekend. And when Inter Miami's not playing on the weekend.
In an official game, Drake Callender is not on the list.
I mean, but he could just be in the camp. He could be in the camp. Based on his form, he could be in camp and just get his feet wet as the 3rd or 4th option. Why not?
That's not what the national team is for. As good a person as Drake Callender is, the national team is for the best players of the country, not to give favors to anybody.
It's not giving favors, Jose. It's introducing a young player into the fold who's playing well and who you can see as a potential contributor down the line. You see it all the time with goalkeepers. You see it all the time. But anyway, I do think it was a risk that they are with the national team, that they went away from Inter Miami in the week leading up to a big game, not only because of the potential for injury, but they're also going to be missing a good bit of preparation. Maybe not as big a deal for a goalkeeper, but for DeAndre Yedlin, absolutely. Because guess what? He missed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He probably will arrive back in town on Thursday, which means he's not training on Thursday. He'll do recovery and maybe go over some game film. And then Friday, he'll do a light session before traveling again on Saturday. So preparation at a minimum. Again, not ideal, especially when you're like Inter Miami in the situation that you're in, 5-game losing streak with a road game on hand. But nonetheless, they both were with the U.S. men's national team, so they both got a call-up. So that's something that happened after we recorded last week. So that's it for my final thoughts, and that does it for this week's show. We'll be back again next week, hopefully in between the Houston Dynamo game and the Miami FC game, so we can preview the Miami Clásico. So we might have 2 pods next week if our schedules permit, and if these 2 lovely co-hosts can make it happen. And hopefully Andrea's voice clears up and she feels better. So for Andrea Yanez, for Jose Armando, I am Franco Panizo. You have been listening to Miami Total Football Radio. I'll talk to you guys again next week.